Good morning. So today we're going to be learning lesson number 26, which is solving equations when we have fractional coefficients. So the first thing I want you to do is to do now, which is two questions, finding the least common multiple and the least common denominator. So I want you to take a second, do that, pause this video, and come back to check your answers. So if we take a look at number 1, I wrote out all my multiples for 10, 5, and 20. And I found that my least common multiple was 20. Number 2, I need to find my least common denominator. So I need to look at the bottom of the fractions and write out those multiples. So I wrote out my multiples of 3, 8, and 6. And I found my least common multiple was, my least common denominator would have been 24. So looking at solving equations with fractional coefficients, the first thing we need to do is, don't let the fractions scare you. We're just going to look at the denominators, and we're going to find our least common denominator. So I have a 2 in my denominator, a 6 in my denominator, and a 12. So I'm going to find my least common denominator there. So I'm going to list out my multiples of 2. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and so on. Then I'm going to list out my multiples of 6. I have 6, 12, 18, 24, and so on. And then my multiples of 12. So I have 12, 24, 36, and so on. So what's my least common denominator here? 2 is not in all of them. 4 is not. 6 is in 2, but not all of them. 8 is not. 10 is not. But we have 12. So my least common denominator is 12. So then we want to create equivalent fractions so that every term has the same denominator. So in order to do that, we need to get all of our denominators to be 12. So I need to figure out what I need to multiply to get all of my denominators to be 12. So here, what can I multiply 2 by to get a denominator of 12? 2 times what gives me 12? Well, we need to do 2 times 6. And what I do to my denominator, I do to the numerator. So then this ends up being 6 times 1 is 6. Over 6 times 2 is 12x, then plus. I need that denominator of 6 to become a 12. What do I multiply 6 by to get it to be a 12? 6 times 2. What I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So 6 times 2 gave me 12, and then 2 times 5 gives me a 10, equals. Now this one's already a 12, so I just leave it as 1 over 12. Then once we have all of the same denominators, what we can do is we can just cross out the denominator. So I'm going to cross out my denominator and then rewrite the equation with just my numerators, or without my denominator. So this is 6x plus 10 equals 1. Then we're just going to solve it like it's a regular equation. So the first thing I need to do to solve this, it's just a 2-step, is I need to subtract 10 on both sides. So I end up with 6x equals 1 minus 10 is a negative 9. Then I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. And I get x equals negative 9 over 6. Or if you simplify that fraction, you could divide both of these by 3. So we get x equals negative 3 over 2. Now let's try example 1 together. So we're going to put our line down, our equal sign. And then I see all these fractions, so I need to get rid of the fractions. So I need to find a least common denominator. So I'm going to look at my denominators. So I have 4, 8, 3, and 6. So I need to find the least common denominator of these. So I'm going to list out my multiples on the side. So I have 4. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, and so on. Then I have 8. So I'm going to list out my multiples of 8. So I have 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, and so on. Then I have 3. So I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, and so on. And then I have 6. So I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and so on. So if we look here, we need to find our least common denominator, or least common multiple of these, which will become our least common denominator. So 4 is not common between all of them. 8 is only common between 2 of them. 12 is only common between 2 of them. 16 is only common between 2 of them. 20 is not common. 24 is common between 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them. So my least common denominator is going to be 24. So then we need to get all of our denominators to be 24. So what can I multiply 4 by to get it to be 24? Well, you would multiply 4 by 6. And what we do to the denominator, we do to our numerator. So 6 times 3 gives us 18 over 6 times 4, which is 24x. Then I have 8 here. 8 times what gives me 24? Well, 8 times 3. What I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So then I have minus 3 times 1 is 3 over 3 times 8 is that 24 equals 2/3. What do I multiply 3 by to get it to become 24? Well, 3 times 8. And what I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So 8 times 2 gives me 16 over 8 times 3, which is 24.
Miss Toast, can you please call the main?
Then we have plus 1/6. What do I multiply 6 by to get 24? Well, that would be 4. What I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So I multiply by 4. So I get plus 4 times 1 is 4 over 4 times 6, which is 24. So now, if we take a look, we notice that all of our denominators are the same. So when all of our denominators are the same, we can just cross them out. And then we're just going to rewrite with our numerator. So 18x minus 3 equals 16 plus 4. So then we have no distributing, but we notice that we need to combine like terms. Remember, we're going to follow that don't call me after midnight. So we're going to combine our like terms, and I notice that I have like terms on my right side of my equation. So I'm going to combine the 16 and the 4. On my left side, I still have 18x minus 3, then equals 20. Now there's no variables we need to move over because we only have variables on one side. So I'm just going to add my 3 on both sides. So I get 18x equals 23. And then finally, I'm going to divide by 18 on both sides. And I get x equals 23 over 18. And you can't simplify that, so we could just leave it as a fraction. So let's look at example 2. So first thing we want to do is we want to put our line down our equal sign. Now I notice I have some fractions and some are not fractions. So how do we make those numbers that are not fractions into fractions? Because we want them all to be fractions. So remember, any number could be written as a fraction if you put it over a 1. So then we want to still, since we have all these fractions, create a least common denominator. So I'm going to look at my denominators. And I need to find the least common. So I have 4 that I need to list my multiples of. So I have 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on. Now 1 has every single number as a multiple, so you don't need to list that out. Then I have 2. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. So I notice here that 4 is actually my least common denominator. So I need to get every fraction to have a denominator of 4. So if I look, 1/4x is already with a denominator of 4, so I can leave it. Then this has a denominator of 1. What do I multiply 1 by to get 4? Well, 1 times 4. And what I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. Now remember, there's an invisible 1 here. So there, it's really 4 times 1, which would give me a 4x, over 4 times 1, which is 4, equals Look here, I have negative 3 over 1. What do I multiply 1 by to get it to be 4? I multiply it by 4. But what I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So then here I have 4 times negative 3, which gives me a negative 12, over 4 times 1, which is 4. Then plus 1/2. What do I multiply 2 by to get it to become a 4? Well, I multiply 2 times 2. And then what I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. So 2 times 1 is 2, over 2 times 2, which is 4. And then we have that x there. Now, all of my denominators are the same, so I can just cross them out. And then I'm left with 1x plus 4x equals negative 12 plus 2x. So now I notice I can combine my terms here. So on my left side, I have a 1x and a 4x, which are going to combine to give me a 5x equals, I can't combine anything on the other side, so I just rewrite it. So now I have variables on both sides, so I need to move my variables over to one side of the equation. And the way that I'm going to do that is I take the smaller one, which is the 2x, and I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. So I end up with a negative 12 over here, and then 5x minus 2x gives me 3x. Then here, I can just divide by 3 on each side, and I get x equals a negative 4. All right, so now I'd like you to try examples 3 and 4 on your own and come back to check your answers. But I'd like you to remember that 2m is really over 1, and m is really over 1. And then on example 4, the 3 is really over a 1 as well. So take a second, pause this video, and try to do that. So taking a look at example 3, first we need to find our least common denominator, and I found my least common denominator to be 6. So then I needed to get all my denominators to be 6. So in order to get 3 to be 6, I multiply by 2. And what I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. And I ended up with 2 6. To get 1 to be 6, I multiply by 6 in my numerator and denominator. And I get 12m over 6. Then, to get 1 to be 6, I also multiply by 6 in both my denominator and my numerator. And I end up with 6m over 6. And then to get the 2 to become a 6, I multiply by 3. I do this in my numerator as well. And I get minus 9 over 6. All of my denominators are the same, so I can just cross them out, and then I rewrite my equation with my numerators. So I have 2 plus 12m equals 6m minus 9. Then I have variables on both sides, so I need to move them over. So I subtract 6 on both sides, 6m, and I get 2 plus 6m equals negative 9. Then I need to subtract 2 on both sides. I end up with 6m equals negative 11. I divide by 6 on both sides, and I end up with m equals negative 11 over 6. Number 4. Once again, I need to find my least common denominator, which becomes 12. So then I need all of my denominators to be 12. So here, to get 2 to become 12, I multiply both the numerator and denominator by 6, and I get 6 over 12x. Then I need the 4 to become a 12, so I multiply by 3, and I end up with 18 over 12. Then equals 6 needs to become a 12, so I multiply both by 2. I get 4x over 12. And then 1 needs to become 12, so I'm going to multiply by 12 in my denominator and my numerator, and I get plus 36 over 12. Since all of my denominators are the same, I'm going to cross them all out. Then I rewrite with my numerator, and I get 6x plus 18 equals 4x plus 36. I have variables on both sides, so I need to move them over, so I subtract 4x on both sides. I get 2x plus 18 equals 36. Then it's just a simple two-step. I subtract 18 on both sides. I get 2x equals 18. I divide by 2 on both sides, and I get x equals 9. If you have any questions, please comment them on this video or on the Google Classroom, and then complete practice worksheet number 26.